Hello, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Gunilla Öberg. I'm one of the professors here in IRES. And I want to start by expressing my gratitude to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people for allowing us to be here, even though we're not paying any rent. Today's speaker is Diana Bedolla López, and I have the pleasure of co-supervising her with Anne-Heike Leopold, who is an adjunct professor here and also been working as an ecotoxicology consultant for over 30 years. And she's also been the president of the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry, which has chapters in Europe, North America, and in other places of the world. And she's been the president of the European section. And through her, Diana was introduced to CTAC and CIRIC, which is the science something communication chapter in that organization. And CTAC, I should say, is an organization for all environmental chemists and toxicologists, and it combines people from government, industry, and academia. And they have this chapter for science communication, and they wanted someone to work with questions about that and how to get people to better understand what we're actually doing and how it's relevant and so on. So Diana was engaged with that and has been working with CIRIC. And it's been a fantastic journey to see how Diana has been engaging with this group and getting really interesting conversations going. And it's Anne-Heike is in Holland, that's why she's not here. Otherwise, she would be introducing Diana, because they've been working more together than I should take less pleasure, not pleasure, less, what's the word, honor of this fantastic thesis. So, and Diana also, she is a very low-key person. So she says, I don't know. And then you pressure and she knows exactly what she's talking about. So don't be tricked by that. But with that, without further ado, I will introduce Diana, who's been here a little bit over 2 years, and she'll be defending her thesis on the 6th of October. And Nancy Longnecker from New Zealand will be her opponent, who's one of the big names when it comes to science communication and science communication training. So those of you who have any interest in that might want to, I know she doesn't want me to say that, but you might want to peek in when she's defending her thesis. So further ado, over to Diana.
Thank you. Well, hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about how to assess effective science communication training. And one of the reasons why I became interested in science communication is because I wanted to bridge the gap between science and society. And I like to think that bridges are a way to connect paths. And this interaction between science and society, it's not always that easy. So I always wonder things like, if there is plenty of information about, for example, climate change, why do people still deny it? And some other questions like this. Could it be that scientists are not that good at communicating? So then I learned about the deficit model of science communication. And the deficit model describes the situations where the scientists think that people need to be educated in scientific topics. And once scientists have provided the information to the people, then the people will be able to make better decisions or change their behavior or support scientific research. But these assumptions have been proved wrong by many scholars in science communication. And the pandemic was a clear example on how providing facts is not enough for effective communication. In reality, people need more than that, than facts. And because when we think about communication, we think about people having a conversation or a dialogue, and someone speaks and the other listens and the other way, and so on. So it's not as the current science communication is happening when someone just stands in front of people and presents something. So if the deficit model doesn't work, why to keep using it? I wanted to explore this kind of issues, and I started working with the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry, CTAC, And they have this interest group in risk communication called IRES. So my research is a community-based participatory research. And this means that I work closely with a community to take action. And the community is IRES. And one of their goals that they have is to provide their members with training with better training in science communication. But what do we mean by better training? I started taking all the training that I could find online during the beginning of the pandemic. And there were many kinds of training and different topics, but something that some of the training had in common is that trainers started by asking the scientists, what is your goal? And what do you want to communicate? And of course, it's important to know your goals for communication. But if training is only focused on answering this question, then where is the dialogue? So while searching in the literature, I found that my experience taking this training, and well, it was not something new, and the deficit model is still too attached to the type of training that is on offer. Then I wonder why. What if the training is not being useful to improve scientist communication? How can we know? And one way to know if a training program is effective is through an assessment. But very few trainers conduct a kind of assessment at the end of the workshop. So if there is not enough assessment, let's do something. And the purpose of my research then was to develop a framework and a tool to assess the effectiveness of science communication. I started working directly with IRES to try to explore what do we mean by effective science communication, by effective training, and to find ways to assess it. And during this kind of conversation, we talk about using interviews or surveys to assess the effectiveness. But we decided that surveys were a useful and more practical way to assess it, because it's not the same to assess semester-long course in science communication than a 2-hour workshop that is common in science communication. So if I wanted to develop a survey, what information do I need? And first I found that for assessment, you need to know the purpose. So a judgment-oriented purpose was really helpful to explore the type of question that I need to answer to assess training effectiveness. One of the question is, how do we know if the training is helping those it is intended to help, or did the program work, or if it achieved its goals? And if the purpose is to assess effectiveness, I needed to know what that means. And the literature review and the discussions with IRES helped me to conclude that it's important to assess the knowledge, the skills, and the behavior. I also found that there are specific skills that are recognized in the literature of science communication about the skills that an effective communicator should have. These skills are like avoiding jargon when you are presenting, or being able to summarize your research in like 3 sentences, or being able to recognize your audience. And the recognition of these skills is important because most of the training is a skill center. That means that you go to a training and you learn how to craft a story, how to design good visuals for your research, or how to start a podcast. And this type of goals are important when you're doing an assessment, because if trainings develop clear program goals, then they will be able to track the students' performance. And to know if there was a change in the student's performance, you can have a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. So for my research, I developed a pre-survey, a post-survey, and a second post-survey to be applied 2 months after the training to know if someone learned something. But I will explain that later. So then I started exploring different approaches to assessment in the educational literature, and I found the Kirkpatrick model. And this approach was developed to assess short training or professional training. And this model has 4 levels. The first level is about the students' reactions about the training. It also aims to assess the learning, the behavior, and lastly, the result. That it's more about the impact of the training in terms of the effects and benefits on the institution, company that is doing the assessment. So the first 3 levels seem to be more useful for my survey. But as I mentioned, most training in science communication is skill-centered. So how can I assess skills development? Because skills development usually takes time and practice. And one of the concepts that helped me to understand how to assess skills was the transfer of learning. And the transfer of learning is the kind of strategies that trainers use during the workshop or after in the assessment to know if the students are applying something in practice. But then how I can assess practice through a survey. And the theory of planned behavior was useful to find a way to do it. This theory was developed by Isaac Axon, a social psychologist, and this theory has been proved to be convenient to know future behavior, future engagement in a behavior. So the theory concludes that the best predictor to future behavior is the intention to do something. So if someone is learning new skills in science communication, a good predictor to know if that person is going to apply something that they learned during a training will be just the intention to do it. Now, specifically for the assessment, I was looking for an alternative approach to this kind of test at the end of a workshop. And one approach is the authentic assessment. And it's similar to the transfer of learning and the theory of planned behavior because it's about finding ways to assess a transfer of knowledge and skills and the integration and reasoning of complex concepts and applying it to different contexts. So in my survey, I used an if scenario where participants can imagine a situation where they have to make decisions on what communication approach is better. And then with all this information, I developed the first draft for my survey. The first survey aimed to assess previous knowledge in science communication and get insight on the participants' goals and intentions for communication. The post-survey number 2, that is to be applied right after the training, aim to assess the participant knowledge and goals, a change in knowledge and goals after attending the training. And the post-survey number 2 aim to assess, to know if participants actually are applying something they learned. And then I tested this survey in a workshop organized by SIREC members. And after the testing, I had a meeting with organizers, with the training organizers to talk about the program goals and ways to know if participants actually learned something. I presented some of the results from the survey and then mentioned the importance of getting feedback or about knowing if participants value the workshop or if it was useful for them. Then I also had a meeting with SIREC members where we talk about ways of knowing if training was effective. And after these 2 meetings, I revised the survey and I decided to add new goals for each survey. But then I tested the second version in 2 workshops here at UBC. All the testings were online using Qualtrics. And the results from the survey helped me to revise the specific questions, the order of the questions, the response options, the wording, the type of scale. And then I collected again feedback from direct members, and I held a meeting where I specifically asked them about some kind of questions to know if the questions really were useful to assess what I was trying to assess. So this is what I did. First, the survey testing, feedback, revision, and again, twice to develop the final version of the survey. And here are the aims of the final version. The pre-survey aimed to create a baseline for participants' previous knowledge and gain insight into participants' expectations and interests. The post-survey number 1 aimed to assess the change in participants' knowledge and skills to know if participants value the workshop, how participants value the workshop, and and to know if participants are planning to apply something they learned. Past survey number 2 then aimed to determine if participants have applied something in the past 2 months, well, after the training, and if not, why. And then also determine if the event inspired participants to improve their science communication approach and the level of confidence they have now with their skills. So I started this presentation by saying that the problem is the deficit model. And I consider that the steady effect of the deficit model in the training is a call for trainers to improve their initiatives. And a way to do that is through assessment. And using this educational approach was crucial in my research because testing the survey was a way to know how to apply the concepts that I presented here and know what works and what doesn't work. I also realized the importance of working with other experts from different fields like educators. If we really want to improve training, then we need to do more interdisciplinary research, but not only research, also working with practitioners and end users to develop appropriate assessments. Because I noticed that the feedback that I got from organizers and direct members really helped me to complete the survey because they told me about things that I wasn't aware of as organizers, but also as people that have taken some training in science communication. And finally, well, the framework and survey that I developed here contribute to the first conceptualizations for training assessment, and hopefully provide with alternative ways of thinking about assessment in science communication training. And I'd like to thank my supervisors, Sunila and Anjaika and Bedolla, and all the rest of the professors at UBC that helped me to complete this research. And thank you for listening. Do you mean like what were the training goals for the testing that I did? Okay, one of the goals was to provide scientists with the basics of risk communication. That was the first testing. And then the other two workshops here, you can see one was about being clear on your message, like develop the importance the important sentences for your message. And the other one was about basics of science communication. So yeah, it wasn't that specific.
Yeah, I think it's, Diana did not run the workshop.
No.
She was working with organizers who were working, running the workshop.
The last two here at UBC, and one was from CTAC Africa. So the question is, how do I know if I need to make some revisions about, yeah, the survey type of questions that I use to know if the questions work to assess what I want to assess. So I think it was while yeah, seeing the results from the survey and the way that people answered helped me to know that maybe some of the questions weren't clear. And also, yeah, the meetings that I held with Cyrus, it was specifically to show them the question and ask them, do you think this question helped me to know this thing specifically about each goal that I have for each survey? And then other things that I learned, in fact, with Terry, like revising the scales and the response option. So it was kind of everything. It was learning from the survey literature, from the feedback from Cyrix, from the results from the first testing, and so on.
So if someone suggested something, you just put it.
No. We discussed it together also with my supervisors, and then yeah, some of the feedback that I got from about the scales, for example, it was really not that useful, so I had to read again the literature to make decisions. So the question was if I found that 2 months is enough to know if there was a change for an application of new knowledge and a change in skills. And I think that is something that I need to consider. Well, that I also wrote about in my thesis because of the pandemic, it was hard to imagine that people have the opportunity to apply what they learn in a presentation or other kind of events. But the results show that some people had the opportunity to do it. And also the pulse survey asked participants specifically to say why they didn't apply something. If it was the time, if it was that they didn't have the opportunity, or if they felt like they are not prepared for doing some science communication. So I think I would say that 2 months sounds like a good time to apply new things, but with assessment, you will never know if a change in behavior or the skills that are being applied are the results of the thing that you teach. That's the problem with assessment. Or it can be that another training helps the people, or it can be that other kind of experiences happen during that time.
I know you mentioned that about the dialogue to do some sort of exchange. So I was wondering if in the training that there was a focus on the option, and I was also because this research on this I guess have you ever thought of in addition to certificate, not that our scientists have
So the first question is about the focus that training has on dialogues. Yeah, that's something that I noticed that in training they always tell you that it's important to engage with your audience and recognize your audience, but they don't say much on how to do it. So yeah, I think that's one of my critiques of current training, that it's really hard to learn how to engage with real audiences. More than just like today here, I can say that I'm going to present for graduate students and just that, but I don't know much about each of you, right? And what do you want me to say, or what would you like to hear? So that's a problem in science communication training. And the second question about ways to know if scientists are being good at engaging with people. Or...
Yeah, I would think beyond surface. I guess because it's probably right the first part. Yes, it's sure already is kind of maybe it's just for other conceptualize that with the sort of behind
yeah.
Answer one question there.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's also that's not the focus of my research, but there's I think some kind of research about the way that scientists are engaging with people. But that's the problem is also that you need to consider the audience and what the audience wants. Conflict. So the question is about how I use the information from my results on and about the dialogue. Yeah, I think the first version of the survey, I had more questions about that to see if people change their perception on the importance of communicating or the goals. But then I realized that wasn't maybe useful to know if the training was effective, because it depends on each program goals that I think it was just the first testing. The results just helped me to understand like how hard it is to trying to know if scientists are able to know that a dialogue is needed. And this is because if the training is also not that focused on dialogue, then how can I ask them about it? People will say, yeah, it's important, but if they didn't learn that during the training, then I don't know if that will be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, Daniel. One, two, three, four.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation. I'm wondering if I understood this correctly, it was a self-assessment kind of like how much they learned. You built that self-assessment and the survey was a reliable measure of them actually improving their science communication, and if not, maybe how do you remedy that? And then, yeah, I guess a second part to that is, do you have any future plans to follow up on this research?
The question is if I consider that self-assessment is a useful way to measure what I want to measure. And this is something that I started when I started the research. I was like really into avoiding self-assessment because I read that it was bad. But then through the course of the research, I noticed that it's really hard to have different kind of assessment. And the only thing is that there are some other approaches for assessment, like one or two in the literature, and they consider the audience or the trainers and the scientists. And it was really sad to see that in the results they didn't find a difference between taking the training or not after doing that kind of big assessment, because they asked, for example, the students to record themselves before the training, saying something, and then after the training, and no difference, because the people consider that, oh, your communication is the same. So after learning about assessment, I realized that the best assessment is the assessment that is the most effective, fast, and useful. And if you spend that much time doing a complex assessment, maybe nothing will change. So now I believe that this kind of self-assessment it works for what is for this.
Yes, we.
I was curious also a little bit more about the question. Like my interpretation is that develop a survey, set of surveys, across different children. And I'm wondering if there's something specific practice or if this is different actual questions needed on some of the content.
So the question is if I consider using different kinds of questions for different kinds of training. So that's something that is, considered in my surveys, specifically with the learning goals that trainers have. So most of my questions are general, but I have some like 2 or 3 that ask participants about the specific learning goals, like what would you do in this situation and how would you apply this? So I left a blank space for trainers to fill it with their own learning goals. So that's my way to adapt my surveys to specific training. So the question is about the theory of plant behavior, and if I was able to maybe assess if there was a correlation between the intention and the actual behavior. But yeah, that was an aim of my testing. I did not have the opportunity to do any statistic analysis. But yes, I added questions about the intention to apply something. So the question is if there's something unique about training and science communication compared to other kinds of training. And I think my approach considered that this training is all it's mostly short training, and it's for adults. So that's one important step when you do program planning or program assessment, to consider that adults learn in different ways. They don't have time usually, and they want specific topic. So that was one big difference. And I think also, yeah, what I mentioned about the skill center nature of the training, because in the literature and usually trainers believe that good training in science communication is where you can learn about the models of science communication or other kind of topics, but this is not happening in real life. It's all about skills. So I think it's important to notice that distinction in the skills, because if we want to improve training, then maybe we need more training in different kind of topics, not only about the skills.
I was curious, do you think that sort of survey treatment the like to like so when I think about like science communication, I guess especially think it's something like trainings. I'm also thinking for like who has access to the trainings, and I'm wondering if that application might look different with different models. Like questions in some cases, I think some people aren't literate, so serving my different models. I was just wondering about like your time.
So the question is about the target audience for my survey. So the surveys that I developed, but it's for the scientists that took the training in science communication. So I think the only difference is, yeah, like cultural differences of scientists or students around the world. And I think that was something that I considered after the first revision, because the organizers mentioned that it's not the same to take a training here, for example, that maybe free than in Africa that you have to pay for it. And so the value that you gave to the training is different. But in general, yeah, the audience is scientists or students, graduate students.
So I have a question from Zoom. If you would pull this up right for
That's interesting. Well, yeah, if, yeah, well, I was thinking about just science communication about scientific topics, but not social science. So I think, yeah, that would be another approach. Yeah.
So you started with a question about the deficit gap. Do you feel that you somehow managed to address that? Did you just feel co-opted that you had to develop a survey that whatever they teach, and you just have to help them better?
I think I can help them to realize that they shouldn't be using the deficit model in their training anymore, all the training. Yeah.
Did the survey help them out, or is that the conversation with the CRES?
Well,
Wider.
Well, that the conversations with Sarek helped me and with the organizers, and I think that if trainers use this kind of approach, they will be able to realize what is wrong with science communication.
By using the survey.
Yeah, and the framework that I developed here.
It's kind of a stealth way of getting that into science communication. Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Oh, thank you very much.